I'm so tired of people saying that it's just a movie, it's just a comic book, it's just a TV show. Whatever. No, it's not. Stories are the building blocks of our culture, of ourselves, even of our own psychology. We are a product of the stories we tell ourselves about our own past and the experiences on a daily basis, but also the stories that we choose to spend time with. What types of values or feelings or whatever are they promoting? What types that we like to spend our time around? They're going to shape us. They're going to shape our personality and character, and they're going to shape our perception of the world and the acts and behaviors that we put out into the world. And people don't understand that. They go, it's just a movie. It's just this. I can like and promote whatever I want. Well, of course you can, but you should pay attention to the responsibility that you have.
Consume stories responsibly.
As a member of society, as a human being, responsibility to yourself.
Consider the consequences.
You need some balance. You need some certain criteria that is going to make sure you're promoting the right kind of works, or at least have thought through the type of work that this or that story is going to do in our culture, and then make your own decision whether or not that's something you want to support.
Consume stories responsibly. Consider the consequences. Consume stories responsibly.
Hello everyone, I'm Professor Geek. Welcome back to the channel, and hopefully you can hear me okay. The mics are plugged in properly. As you hear, Alyssa is with me. She's in the back there. As soon as I started talking, she said, "Daddy, stop talking." So she's she's a little fussy, I think is the best way to describe that. But anyway, hopefully things are going well with everyone. Usually don't have her for these Saturday nights, so I usually don't have her while I'm doing a live stream. So it might be a somewhat shorter live stream tonight. I don't know. It depends on how she does and everything like that. So we will see. But right, stop talking. We'll probably have her commentary occasionally, but Sound Engraver's here to see to her and get her what she needs and whatnot. So yeah. Welcome to everybody who's here. Just see if I can go back up to the top. Let's see, Ghost Planet Max Inc., of course, usually first there. And Nathaniel's Lowsball, welcome. Nathaniel's Lowsball was asking, is the incident today off limits? Which, I appreciate that. But hey, I've never made politics off limits on my channel. My channel isn't a political channel. I don't like cover the news and everything like that. But yeah, I'll talk about politics, especially if it's tied to something like what we've seen today, which is very much tied to this cultural perceptions and cultural. We'll talk about it when we get into it. But first of all, thank goodness that President Trump is okay and that everything is fine. I guess they caught the guy. I haven't really followed the news today after I found out what happened, really. Looks like I had the Captain America and the Avengers game playing back there. And it used to play, last time I did it, it played the whole demo. But this time I've got the Super Nintendo version, which I guess the demo runs out and it just sits there and asks you for what player. So that's why that's frozen. So welcome to Eldridge Fan. Good to see you there. And Electric Barbarella 27. Great to see you. Studio 96 Films, Tom Spiegel. Michael Scimbati, channel member. Great to see you there. Let's see. Tom Spiegel. I said Tom Spiegel. Big Al Presents. Great to see you there, Big Al. Don't know if you're hanging out much. I think you got a rewatch or something you're doing here tonight. But good to see you there. Let's see. That's my dear sound engraver. Popping in. Ace Moick. Good to see you, Ace. I know you were saying that you thought you were not showing up on the channel, Ace, but there you are. So that's good. Glad to know that you're still coming through just fine. Darth Enigma, Final Fantasy fan, Imaginative Hobbyist. Welcome, 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 everybody. And more, and more, and more. Good to see everybody. Crystal Ashes, welcome. So yeah, we're going to talk a little bit. I'm going to open it up a little bit. I had some things to talk about tonight, which I will. But yeah, this happened pretty recently today. Trump was shot at. And I did follow somewhat of the news, of the news media's immediate reaction to it. Because one of the tragedies of our country is that we don't really have a free media anymore. And I don't mean that, it's controlled by this, this politician or this higher power. I mean that the media, and I don't know, I haven't studied enough. Maybe you guys, have looked into it more and know this, but the media is so saturated with ideologues that your average person in the media, whether it's newspapers, television or whatever, they think their job is to mold culture. It's not to report the facts. It's not to make sure that information is given, that we have information getting across and that people understand the news. No, their job, as they see it, is to make sure people think the right things. That's not media, right? Media is news is to give the facts and then let people make up their own minds, right? That's the importance of a free media in theory. We don't have that. And if you think I'm wrong, just ask yourself this. Imagine it had been Barack Obama speaking somewhere and he had been shot at. The media would declare national crisis. We would be in mourning as a nation, according to the media and all of this stuff. This would go on for, 6 months. We would be going on about this. But it was Trump. And the very first thing the news did, Sound Engraver read me NPR's initial coverage of it. And NPR said, what appears to be a gunshot was sounded. Trump slumped over and there appeared to be some blood in his face. We don't know whose blood that was. We don't know. I mean, they just tried their best to because they know that whoever did this, I didn't follow the news to the person who had been doing it, but whoever did it basically won Trump the presidency. I mean, this is, I know they're going to fight hard against that, but I'd be shocked. And I think that we'll probably be able to go back and look at this point, if not before, that this is, So they tried their best to just downplay this. Let's just not make such a big deal out of it. Y'all, it's bad, something happened, but let's move on to other things now, guys. I mean, they're really going to try and do that. They won't be able to do it as quickly as they can, but they're really going to try and be able to do that. Absolutely. And I remember when, and I'm saying I'm kind of using Barack Obama as a comparison here, because even the staunchest, most leftist Democrat who tries their hardest to put Joe Biden on a pedestal has problems with him, right? I mean, there's rumblings right now in the party about them maybe trying to replace him and stuff like that. Not all Democrats are all leftists, but a lot of them, enough of them are trying to replace him as their candidate for it to be an issue, for it to be something that's talked about. So, really, I remember when Barack Obama was even running, and when he was elected, the media and Hollywood too, not just news media, but entertainment industry, was trying to deify this man. They 8 straight years we had to deal with them trying to deify a human being. Alex Ross did a picture of him with the O on his chest and the exact same pose that he did Superman with. I mean, they were 100% trying. And if you just didn't like Barack Obama, like I still don't like Barack Obama. I can't stand his smugness. I think he's very arrogant. I'm very opposed to his politics, but I don't hate him as a human being. I don't scowl every time I see him on the news like somebody with Trump derangement syndrome does. But even that, coming out, if it was revealed that you didn't like Barack Obama, if you didn't, you were ostracized. You were just like, what? At first you were like, what? How are you even say that? And I mean, it's just a given. If a president's elected, there are going to be some people that like him and some people that don't. That's a deal with it. There's going to be, so it was, I remember for the longest time when he was first elected, Barack Obama was first elected, it was just, they tried desperately to just ignore and pretend that no dissenting voice was possible. Remember, there was a whole news campaign. We are one. The whole country is one. Everybody's come together now under him. No, he's a politician. He's going to have people that were for him and very much against him. That's just the way it's always been. But they tried their best, and they used the media to do that, to pretend that no dissent exists. No, everybody loves Obama. Then when Trump was elected president, first of all, that was just hilarious. I love watching the news shows, as he was elected, just because they just knew. They had told you how to vote. They told you not to vote for him. So of course you weren't going to vote for them because they had told you. They're the news media. They're the Hollywood media. They are the ones in charge. And they just couldn't believe it that voters didn't listen to them. The voters, voted for what they wanted. And I remember immediately there was this, I mean, you guys know the whole Trump derangement syndrome, the outcry. I remember going to a science fiction convention somewhat shortly after the election, within a couple months or something like that. And what was his name? Nicholas Meyer, I guess, the guy who wrote Star Trek II, and he also wrote the novel about Jack the Ripper and H.G. Wells and everything like that. Really great writer. And I remember he had a button on it the whole time he was there talking to fans called "The Resistance." We're resisting, this Trump person that we're not even going to call president. I'm like, you're at a con trying to sell autographs, and you're just going to, that's more important to you. The ideology is more important to you to get that across than actually welcoming fans, no matter who they may have voted for. And I'm saying all this because there's an idea that's been floated around a lot recently. I wasn't planning on talking about this. I didn't even know how much I had to say about it, but until this incident happened today, and I heard actually a second cousin of mine say it, and I've heard it from a lot of other people too. And these are people who were, who are leftists or Democrats or, however you want to call them. They hate Trump. Which fine. Okay. I don't really hate any individual, but, maybe in slang terms, you might say, oh, I hate Obama. I can't stand Obama. Sure. Maybe I can say that, in sort of a, unguarded way of speech, but I don't literally hate anybody. But these people truly hate Trump. These people, despite what they might say, are bummed that the bullet didn't make its mark today. They really are. They're that deranged. And this person said, the thing I don't get about Trump supporters is that they're just so cult-like. They're just like a cult in their behavior. And I hear that and I'm thinking, we put up with 8 years of your straight up deification of a human being, just a human flesh and blood being named Barack Obama. You don't get to ever accuse anybody of cult like behavior. That's just not going to happen. But they can't see that. They can only see they're the good people, and people who disagree with them are ignorant or evil. That's just how that works. Here, Alyssa, she's getting ready to settle down for bed, so Sound Engraver's putting her down. And it is tied to what I talk about on this channel. I'm all out of Twixes. How about a piece of Hershey's? You want to put it in the cooler? Okay. Let me. Actually, I think there might be some underneath the books up there. Yeah. No, underneath the books. Got it in there. Shuffle a couple books around there. So, it is tied to what I talk about in the channel because it's how we think of heroes, how we make heroes. We did a whole book study on Dune, and Frank Herbert talking about the danger of making any individual human being the superhero, level and stuff. But I don't really know anybody. Like, yeah, I support Trump. I voted for him, and I'll certainly vote for him again because I think he was a good president. Do I think he's a great human being? Do I defend everything the man has ever said or whatever? No, because I'm a logical human being. A lot of leftist ideologues that I've talked to. I'm not talking about just somebody who might have more leftist politics or might just have more democratic, leanings, whatever. But the leftist ideologues, they don't know how to just support a human being and not worship him, right? I mean, I remember even when John Kerry was running against Bush, people were trying to oh, he's such an amazing person. He's just a good person. He's they don't know how to not hero worship somebody. And you can certainly look at Republican presidents too, who may or may not have been hero worshipped at times. I really don't know anybody who was hero worshiping George W. Bush. I voted for him twice and happy that I did, but I still didn't hero worship him. There were still plenty of things he did I didn't agree with. Maybe Reagan, I don't know. I really liked Reagan, but I was just a child when he was president, so I didn't really, I can't really speak to what was going on back then. But when this happened and you see the picture, thank God Trump is okay. And I don't know to what extent the bullet grazed him. I think it was his ear or something like that. And you do see the blood on his. That's just so Trump. And I gotta say, like I said, I'm nobody hero worshiping at all. But man, that is just freaking cool. That image of him standing back up, fist in the air, and the American flag is waving behind him. I mean, that's just he's people are to hold him because it's like Secret Service people trying to keep him protected, but it looks like he's raving up in between them. I mean, that's whoever took that shot and tried to silence the man. He couldn't ask for better PR than that. I mean, that's freaking amazing. That picture is going to go down in history. It absolutely will. That's pretty impressive. So yeah, I don't know. It just happened today. Like I said, I haven't followed all the ins and outs of the story, but I think it touched on enough of what I talk about on my channel in terms of cultural mythologies. Because not only do we mythologize our fiction, we also mythologize individuals, in the public or in history and so forth. I've talked about how we think about the founding fathers and so forth and whatnot as well. So don't really have a lot more to say about that, unless it comes up in chat there. But we can do that. I know Michael Scimbati, as he does, send a super chat here about Batman villains again. I really appreciate your super chat, Michael Scimbati, and I know Batman villains are your jam. I don't know how much I'll be able to talk about Batman villains tonight. I will absolutely get to your super chat though, because it's a super chat, and I appreciate your support, and I appreciate your all your support. Just your whatever, even if it's not a super chat. So I'll get to that, but I might not get to that until I might circle back around to it at the end. Because I don't know, Alyssa might just be done with me talking in a few minutes. She might just be like, "Daddy, shut up." She won't say shut up. So, so I do want to make sure that I've at least announced the things that I wanted to talk about on this stream in terms of what's going on for my channel content between now and the fall. So I'll come back around to that super chat. And if there are any more, if there are any other spotlighted chats or whatever, I'll get to those. All right. So I titled the thumbnail earlier today, before all the incident happened, Waiting for October. If you guys remember, I actually did a Waiting for October uh, video last summer, and it was just like the middle of the summer slog, the freaking heat, everything. It's just awful. And I said, just waiting for October. Now, of course, last summer I was also waiting to get married to the lovely sound engraver, which was great. Um, but I'm still every summer I just get to that point, waiting for October, waiting for fall. Really, September is a great month. It's still a little too hot, but it's starting. At least there's back to school. People are more fall minded. The Halloween stuff's everywhere, in the stores and everything. So September I'll take even. Um, and I in the past I've done some really cool like October themed or fall themed things on my channel. We did like a Monstober one time. We did some rewatches at one time, and we've done some different things. So this time around, I have been doing a real deep dive in my own scholarship, deep dive of these monster archetypes, even more so than I've done before. I've done videos, and you can only go but so far superficially into what the importance of the Dracula novel is, or the vampire archetype, and I've kept it sort of at a shallower level for the sake of just a month long in my YouTube channel. I'm actually going to start this content on the next episode of the Iconicast podcast, which is late as usual, but it's coming. I'm going to start talking about, the where these archetypes are coming from. They're rooted in a historical moment, and they're rooted in sort of a historical cycle that we see in culture happen again and again and again. And I'm going to talk about that in the episode of the Iconicast, sort of set the basis, the foundation of it. And we are going to try to go a lot deeper, at least into the Dracula, Frankenstein type archetypes, in terms of the different anxieties, the different reaches, the different influences these monsters and their stories have had on society, where they come from, what they really stand for, and so forth. And you can't pin it down to any one thing. I'm not, trying to make a what's the word, an allegory out of them or anything like that. But there will be implications going out into the rest of horror in general too. We can look at how anxieties around Frankenstein, you can liken them to say like Michael Myers and stuff like that. So we'll talk about that, and we're going to go a lot deeper into that. And I think I'm just going to kind of start now, with that episode of Iconicast, and maybe next week's live stream, maybe next week's office hours, we'll delve into it a lot more. Last year I was going to do Sleepy Hollow, because that's one of my real, in terms of American literature, that's one of my interests, really going into deep to Sleepy Hollow, and love that. And I announced that I was going to do that, and people were like, meh. People were like, do Dracula. We'll be into it then. So, and hey, I love Dracula too, by all means. What an amazing novel. Probably one of the greatest, certainly canonical British novels, definitely. So that's the plan. There will be some Halloween themed content starting even now. I don't care. I'm not gonna limit the great season of Halloween to celebrating only 4 little weeks, so we'll keep going with it. Yeah, so that's the channel stuff. What's been going on and where we're going for it and everything like that. Let me cover Michael Scombati's chat here. Thank you very much for the super chat. I do appreciate it. Talking about Red Hood. The animated movie Under the Red Hood as a deconstruction. Oh, this is an interesting question. Most of the Batman live action movies are, and this is an animated one. I did not hate Batman Underneath the Red Hood. Okay, I thought it was a good. Movie. To be honest with you, and this isn't a popular opinion, I'm just not a big fan of Jason Todd surviving. I think Jason Todd should have just died and stayed dead. If you're gonna bring him back, though, I actually prefer the way that the animated film Underneath the Red Hood did it to the way the comic books did it. The comic books did it in this sort of timey-wimey, multiple universe-y way of the DC universe, where you had the Superboy Prime, like trapped and angry and like punching holes into different universes, or it was weird. It was typical DC, too nebulous, to focus on a single good coherent story. But one of the consequences of him doing that was that Jason Todd was like brought back to life. I forget exactly how. I think he came out of the grave. Maybe I don't remember exactly. And there were some good stories in the comics about him coming back as the Red Hood and Batman not knowing who this person was and so forth. And then the big reveal I remember was a big deal and all of that. But in terms of a story perspective, I think it was much more tight, plot wise, just to have Ra's al Ghul be the one who did it. I think that made more sense. And Under the Red Hood is a good film, great voice acting, and it's a good film. It's not one of my favorites. It's not one of my go-tos that I would pick at. So to answer your question, do I think it's a deconstruction? No, I wouldn't say that. I think I wouldn't call it a deconstruction because Batman's still Batman. I think it's endemic of this. We can't ever have a character die, and it's also endemic of this this need for people to have redeemed villains or anti-heroes. This is why people just latch on to Damian Wayne and think, "Yo, Damian Wayne's the greatest." I hate Damian Wayne. He's such a snot-nosed little brat. Other than like the Super Sons, the original Super Sons, I could stomach him in that, and that was cool because he was, inspired by Jonathan Kent, and whatnot. But he's just a brat, and people were like, "Oh, but he had this hard life, and he's trying to do better, but he can't all the time, and he slips up." And I'm not trying to speak for people who love those kinds of heroes, who love a Damian Wayne or a Red Hood, Jason Todd. But that kind of character annoys me because it seems to tell people it's okay. It's okay. Hey, still be rude to people. Still get your revenge on people because you want to be a hero. You want to be a hero. So you're kind of like a Red Hood or a Damian Wayne. You want to be a hero. So it's okay. You don't have to do any real work and really change. That's just what it says to me. Now, I'm sure people who are real huge devotees of one or both of these characters would try to say no. It's much deeper than that. And hey, good for you. I'm not. My existence isn't against that character or whatever. I don't like them. I think the stories are better without them. But if you find something of merit in them, great. Good for you. I'm not. I'm not ideologically opposed to them or anything. But so that's what I would say for the Under the Hood movie. A good film, not one of my favorites just because of the subject matter. Neil Patrick Harris as Nightwing is some pretty awesome voice work, I think. Good casting there, definitely. So that's my answer to that. Let me go back now and just see what's been going on with the chat. AL, good to see you there. Yeah, people talking about the Anne Rice books. I think Leah Plus Size and Electra Barbarella are talking about it. I got into what year did the Interview with the Vampire film come out? I can't remember, like early 90s. So I would have been 12, 13, 14. I don't know exactly when, depending on the year it came out. And the movie was coming out, so I read the novel and really enjoyed the novel, Interview with the Vampire. I still think it's a great novel. Vampire Lestat, I thought it was an interesting choice, and I actually I enjoyed a lot of parts of Vampire Lestat, and I enjoyed the ideas of even Queen of the Damned and stuff. I think I read all the way through Memnoch the Devil at the time, and I didn't really like Memnoch the Devil. I thought by then it was really off the rails. But Interview with the Vampire, what a great book, and one of the greatest things about that book, or what makes it so great for me, is the perspective of Louis. You really do have this guilt-ridden vampire who, has made this choice to do this thing, not really understanding all of the consequences. I'm awake. Are you awake? And the implications of it. And he does not like to kill. It guts him. He's trying desperately to hold on to his humanity, even though he's become this other thing. And juxtaposed with Lestat, who's this great character, who's just like, screw humanity, embrace the demon within, And I mean, it's just I really like that book. I do. And I thought the choice to move to Lestat's perspective for pretty much the rest of the series, I don't want to say it was a mistake, but it turned me off of the series. Not completely, but it removed me one level of the series from the series, as I would have been if you'd stuck with Louis, or other characters like that. Lestat's not a character that I can empathize with or relate to. But there's some good writing done with him. So yeah, so I'm not like anti the Vampire Lestat. I really love the movie that Nicholas, what's his name, did. Um, Tom Cruise just like shocked everybody, doing quite well, I think, in the role of Lestat. So I like that film. You know, the changes it made, I didn't think were deal breakers at all, but it was interesting. Yeah. So people were talking about that there, and maybe we'll talk about that some. But yeah, it is interesting. I mean, the Vampire Lestat. I mean, Interview with the Vampire. It's not exactly the same as Dracula, being an epistolary novel with a story told through news items and diary entries and so forth. But it does have some element of that too, because you're listening, or it's like the transcription of a tape that the Daniel, I think his name is, the interviewer. Um, it's interesting anyway. Yeah, pretty interesting book. Let's see. People are talking about other stuff. People were talking about some of the people we lost this week. Is tragic. Yeah, the first person, I don't know if anybody mentioned in the chat yet, but Benjamin Gregory, I think his name is, who played Brian on Alf, the little boy on Alf. And I saw him. I knew him from Mr. Boogedy too. He was in the Disney Sunday night movies, Mr. Boogedy, which are great classic Halloween films. I still watch those, just about every year, if not every couple years or whatever. And, I don't think he kept acting too much after a childhood, but he was found. He was like 46, not too much older than myself, and found dead the other day, dying of heat stroke in his car with his dog. And I haven't gotten any more details than that, but that's kind of suspect, like whether or not it was, God forbid, suicide, or if there were maybe some drugs related and he passed out, or maybe he had a condition like epilepsy or something, or he passed out. Who knows? But still, just a tragedy, anyway around. So that was horrible to hear about. And of course, Shelley Duvall. Everybody remembers Shelley Duvall from The Shining, which of course she did wonderfully in. I loved her in Popeye as Olive Oyl. I don't hate that movie like everybody else does. I think I thought it was a great film growing up. But my big thing for Shelley Duvall was her American folklore series. I forget what it was called, Tall Tales or something like that. And she starred in one as Dark Clementine, actually, but it was an American folktale, and they would do it was a series on television. You can find them on Amazon now, and they would do dramatizations of different folktales. They did. My favorite, of course, was Sleepy Hollow with Ed Begley Jr. Is Ichabod Crane. But they did. Who was the guy? The Texas. Remember the Texas folk hero? Steve Guttenberg played him, and they did some really great things on that. So that was a series I remember watching growing up, and that's where I kind of remember her the most from. But that was tragic. Of course, she had like, I think some mental health issues, or some, at the very least issues, going on. But that was sad. And then today I just heard about Richard Simmons. Now I'm not invested in Richard Simmons one way or the other in terms of fan wise, but sad that anybody passed away, and he was sort of a cultural icon, too. Everybody knew him and whatnot. So that was sad. Let's see here in the chat. The Imaginative Hobbyist said both Dracula and Frankenstein's monster have been used in DC and Marvel. Which universe do you think they work better in? That's interesting. That's a good question. I don't know if I know enough about their use in DC, to be honest. I know they are used in DC, like you said, and that's kind of ironic, right? Because I'm more of a DC guy growing up. I'd read more DC, but I didn't encounter either character organically in either universe. It wasn't until a few years ago, honestly, that Marvel re-released their. I think I've got it right here, actually. Yeah. They released more than these two. The Tomb of Dracula, just some omnibuses collections in the paperback. But this was great read. I was like, wow, that's so much fun. They did some great stuff in there. We've got the Werewolf by Midnight one, or the first volume of one they did there with Jack Russell. And they even did a Marvel horror compilation where they had Satana and Blade in their first appearances and whatnot. So this was a shorter one, and I'm sure they've done different volumes since I got these, so I need to look into those. So I don't know enough about the DC incarnations of them. I mean, I remember Dracula episode in Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends. That was great. When he tries to get Firestar, he seduces her or wants her as his own. And you got Bobby, who's not gay, Iceman, coming after her because, of course, he's got a thing for her and whatnot. So that was a good episode. Yeah, good question, though. Yeah, Studio 96, it was the Lazarus Pit that Ra's al Ghul used to bring back Jason Todd in the film. Let's see. Yeah, Dean Winchester is good. Yeah, it was what's his name? Oh shoot, what's his name? I know his name. I can kind of almost see it there in my head, but um, Jennings or something like not Jennings. Shoot, somebody will say it here. But yeah, he was the voice for Jason Todd in the film, which is pretty good. Michael's by talking about Black Mask and Scarecrow. I'd have to think about that. Michael. Most of my work is on heroic archetypes, but there is a big field, or I think there's a field ripe for plucking. And I have done some work in the villain archetypes. I need to do more. I've done some videos on villainous archetypes. Of course, the two. As I separate heroic archetypes, before you get into any of the sub archetypes, you've got aspirational and cathartic motivational, the two basic types. And I think when it comes to villains, you've got elemental villains who are just the true evil. They didn't get that way, like a Joker is supposed to be, and so forth. Just the elemental villains, they're elementally evil. They didn't have a point where they went bad, whatever. And most of Batman villains do have a point where they went bad, and that's the sympathetic villain, like a Two-Face, evil. You're not sympathizing with the bad that he does, but you can see where he went wrong. And it's like, man, such a shame that if only things had gone differently in his life or whatever. So those are the two basic types of villains. I'd have to do a little more research on the real canonical background of Black Mask and Scarecrow, because I know a good deal about them, but to really answer your question with some authority, I want to do a little research first. But thank you for the question. It's a good one. Studio Super, good to see you here. So the only super chat I'll be able to give tonight. Do you have any favorite Halloween-themed comic stories? Do I have any themed Halloween comic stories? Of course. And thank you anyway. You don't ever have to give super chats, but I appreciate them. Oh yeah, I mean, off the top of my head, of course, everyone's going to say it, but Batman: The Long Halloween. If you haven't read it, you need to read it. Not just that. Also read Batman Haunted Night by the same people, Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale. And this one collects 3 stories. One is a Scarecrow story, a really great Scarecrow story. I think the other one is a Mad Hatter story, and one's a Joker story. And it's 3 sort of mini arcs that they did. I think it might have even been before they did Long Halloween. Certainly before Dark Victory, which is the one about him finding Dick Grayson and Dick Grayson becoming Robin. But this is good fun Halloween read, really good stories. Dark Victory, Batman Dark Victory. I actually did, if you go into my channel, so many years ago, almost 10 years, not quite 10 years ago, 7 or so, I don't know, when I first started the channel, 8 maybe even at this point. Goodness, was it 2017 or 16? I don't remember. But that one Halloween, I was very ambitious, and I did a 30 days of Halloween, and every single day of October, I did a little mini video on a different Halloween-themed comic book or television superhero Halloween-themed story or whatever. And those were fun. I think you can still find them on my channel. Alice Cooper and Neil Gaiman's The Last Temptation, wonderful Halloween read. It takes place at Halloween too. This is the comic book story that they developed and Neil Gaiman wrote, but it was the story done for the thematic album that Last Temptation that Alice Cooper had, which is probably my favorite album by his if I had to choose one. That's a great read. The Last Temptation by Neil Gaiman and Alice Cooper. Really good stuff. Yeah, those are the ones off the top of my head. And there's so many great like Halloween themed television episodes of different hero stories or whatnot and stuff. So good stuff. Let's see what else is going on here. You doing okay, Alyssa? Okay, you're okay. She's kind of quieting down, so I probably should not stay on much longer because I don't want to be responsible for keeping her awake. So I probably won't be on too much longer. Jensen Eccles, thank you, Ghost Planet. You're the one that answered it there. I knew it was. I was saying Jennings because I knew that Jen was there, and it was some. Yeah. Anyway, Studio 96 Films. Thank you so much for the super chat. said, "What are your thoughts on Deceased?" Yeah, that's something new that they're doing, right? Or somewhat recently. So I don't know a lot about it because I did a video shortly after they ended Rebirth, and I said DC comics are no longer worth reviewing. I said I won't read them and I won't review them outside of like some special event, like continuity free thing, like Marv Wolfman put out a Clark Kent becoming Superman, thing that was something he had written a long time ago, something like that. Or when they did the Action Comics and Detective Comics anniversary issues, which were old stories and whatnot. Of course, I read those and those are fine. But in terms of their new continuity, I just don't care. I could not care less about what happens to these characters after the things that they've been through have been through. So for all I know, the Deceased, maybe it's it looks like a stupid idea. It looks like going into more of the darkness. But even if it's a good idea, I'm not interested in a Superman who's gone through the things that he did. I'm not interested in Jonathan Kent. Jonathan Kent's a garbage character the way they've developed him after Bendis came in and ruined him. I'm not interested in Batman after Tom King has, put him through his crap ringer and so forth and, so on. So, I know comic books are so operatic in that nature where a lot of people can say, well, they're basically not that, now another artist or writers come in and, they're handling them correctly. But I'm such a stickler for story. And I know that things in a character's past alter or influence the things that character goes through today, even if some writers and editors don't always apply that influence. It's there, or it should be there anyway. So yeah. So unfortunately, I can't answer your question in terms of specifics. I can just tell you why I'm not interested in any of DC today. On that ground. Nathaniel Loseball, thank you very much for the super chat. Said you think a reading of The Vite by Ray by Ray Bradbury would be good for Halloween season. Such a great suspense story. I don't think I've read it, to be honest with you. But there's still Ray Bradbury stuff I haven't read. I'll look it up unless I know it and the name just isn't triggering it for me. If I've heard some of the things it was about. But yeah, we did Something Wicked This Way Comes, which is definitely one of my, right up there with Dracula, for one of my favorite books ever written. And we did his From Dust Returned and the Halloween Tree, of course. And I know he did some mystery novels, some murder mystery novels. Then one was like set the day after Halloween or something, I think, which was interesting. Andre Hernandez for $5, thank you so much, said, what is the exact definition of deconstruction? Is it good or bad? How would you describe it to an average person? That's a really great question. Okay. Yeah, Santa Grave Rescue, that she's in bed dropping off. Yeah. So I'll probably wrap it up for too much longer. But what is the definition of deconstruction? Is it good or bad? First of all, it's not just deconstruction in itself is not intrinsically bad. It's being misused so much today that pretty much when you say something's a deconstruction, you can pretty much bet it's going to be bad. But the idea of deconstruction isn't horrible. The idea of deconstruction, I'm trying to think of a way it might have been done in the past. I think like the character of the Sandman, the original superhero who had like the gas mask and the gun and stuff, not the other one Neil Gaiman did. I think Neil Gaiman did a take on the character, like the old pulp hero, the old pulp comic book superhero who did have like the sleeping gas gun and the mask or whatever. And a character like that who wasn't necessarily an icon of culture, right? It wasn't a Superman or anything like that. And they were maybe just sort of shown their stories were a little more two-dimensional or whatever. They were just shown in a certain light. And if someone wanted to come in and take that character now and really break down the motivations of that character and see what makes them tick and why did that character go on to do that thing that they did. Writers have done this for that Sandman character, for example. In some ways that's a deconstruction. And I don't mind that. That's deconstruction itself is just trying to deconstruct. I'm talking about stories. You can even deconstruct an idea or a philosophy or a value. Let's take it apart. And once we've taken it apart, let's see if we can see how it goes back together and if it's worth putting it back together. So deconstruction is very much an act of the trickster in terms of society. But in stories, you're taking a character or a plot line or whatever beloved and taking it apart to see how the parts fit together, see if you want to put it back together the right way, to see if it's worth putting back together the right way. And that's healthy deconstruction. what we're seeing today, deconstruction we're seeing today, is just, yeah, we're bored with good characters. Let's see if we can rough them up. So let's take them apart and let's try to infuse some darkness into them here and there. And now that makes much more sense why they would do that. It's trying to rough them up so that you can relate to them and you don't have to aspire to them anymore. Hence everything I've said on my channel. So that's deconstruction in the wrong-headed approach. If that makes sense. A little quick. Hello. Oh, okay. I didn't know if that was you or Alyssa. I try not to have my daughter on camera, so yeah, I want to make sure she's not sneaking around the corner or something. Gentle Savage for £2, thank you so much. Said, Prof, what do you think of the Batman villain Hush? Good question. I don't know. I'm not an expert on him. I did read the original Heart of Hush when he came through. I like the idea of a Thomas Elliot, what's his name? Character who grew up with Batman. And, because any good Batman villain has to be a dark mirror of him at some point. There has to be, to an extent, not like a Joker or anything like that. But, a lot of Batman villains, what makes them so appealing is there's a, there, but for the grace of God go I, and, that it also has to do with the choices that Bruce Wayne makes. Bruce Wayne had horrible traumas that happened to him, but he didn't decide to react to them in the same way that Mad Hatter or Two-Face did. He decided he's going to do positive activism, So Thomas Elliott's a great example of that, going all the way back to Wayne's childhood. When Wayne's parents were gone, you got Thomas Elliott wishing his parents had left him, wishing his parents, weren't there, wishing he could, so I think killing them eventually, if I remember correctly, but then being so obsessed with Wayne, not only wanting his position, but also eventually taking his own face. Yeah, it's twisted. It's an interesting story. I haven't followed, and I like the first. I think I like the first story. I haven't followed all of the incarnations of Hush. I mean, his appearances in the Arkham video games were fun, underdeveloped, but understandably so, since he was just sort of a ephemeral villain quest. So yeah, interesting character. Don't really not my favorite in the world, but I think some cool things were done with them, and some cool things could be done with them. But I don't know if some bad things were done with them either, or some poorly written things might have been done with them. Who knows? Oh yeah, no, I'm no across the board supporter of Neil Gaiman. He's 100% a woke ideologue in terms of what he supports. And I haven't read any of his recent stuff, so I don't know if it's creeped into his work as of yet. But the fact is, he's written some amazing stuff in the past. Well, like a lot of the woke ideologues today. I mean, they used to write amazing things, and now they're insufferable in the way they're taken over by things. But oh yeah, Neil Gaiman's one of them. He's going to support all the right people and support all. He's 100% in bed with all of that. Yeah, definitely. All right. Let's see. AL. Good to see you, AL. So my favorite horror writer is John Bellairs, who wrote The House with the Clock in Its Walls and such. Yeah, I started reading that whole series. I forgot which one I stopped on. I'm blanking on all the characters' names now too, but the woman in purple had gotten her powers back and everything. And it was a few series in, but I love that series. It was basically like long before Harry Potter ever came to be. These were written in the 30s, I think. Really good sense of stories. Now you might have seen the movie. There was a great movie done with Jack Black and the House with the Clock on Its Walls. Jack Black and it was Dusty. But anyway, The House with the Clock in Its Walls was a good film. It changed a couple of things from the books, but so bummed that the film didn't do better, because this was fun to watch. They could have done some sequels or whatever. But yeah, it was like a wizard, a boy, discovering powers, or his uncle is a wizard and so forth, things like that. But really goes into some cool places, some good versus evil kind of places. And, it was good stuff. I enjoyed it. So yeah, let's see. I want to miss a super chat there. Tom Spiegel, thank you so much, sir, for $10. I said, Professor Geek, that's what I love about Batman's Rogues Gallery. Each one represents a facet of Batman's character gone down the wrong path. Exactly. That's a better way of saying it than what I said. Same with Spider-Man's Rogues Gallery. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that, but you're right. Spider-Man too. In Spider-Man and Batman, even though they're very different characters and very, they differ quite a bit. In some ways, they kind of occupy the same. I don't know if I want to say this because I haven't fully thought it through yet. They sort of occupy the same archetypal space in their respective universes. I don't know if I'm going to say much more about that. Let me think it through a lot more carefully. I think I'm onto something, but I don't really want to. Like I said, I haven't really thought it through enough yet to pin it down. Dr. Y, good to see you. You finally watched the Hobbit trilogy this weekend. Interesting. I was not crazy about the Hobbit trilogy. I liked the first film, actually. Really liked the first film. Didn't mind some of the changes they made, with the goblin and so forth. But where they ended the first film, I thought they're going to make two more of these. They're going to have to invent so much stuff that's not in the books, as they did. And even that I could forgive. My biggest problem with the Hobbit trilogy is that Bilbo is not a hero. He doesn't show any ingenuity in the den with Smaug. It's just sort of dumb luck that he happens to find this and he happens to get out safe. In the book, Bilbo is the book's about Bilbo's journey of real self-discovery and discovering his own abilities, as the thief, and his dealings with Smaug, he's very, positive tricksterish, it's great. I mean, really reading that scene and he gets confidence in himself and he's scared, of course, because it's a terrifying situation, but he plays Smaug beautifully. And he finds these things out, and he has help, of course, from the birds and so forth. But the movie took away all of that. The movie was just silly old scared Bilbo just happening to get lucky in there. I really didn't like that at all. But I did like elements, especially the first film. I thought was a lot of fun and good casting too, right? All right, guys. I'd love to chat with you. I'm having a blast. You guys are bringing up some cool topics and comments, and it would be good to sit here for a while. But Liz has been quiet for a while, and I don't want to be responsible for keeping her up because she takes medication to sleep because her brain doesn't create serotonin, or not serotonin, melatonin, the way a normal person's brain does. So she's on certain medication to sleep, and once it hits her, you've got to let her sink into it, or else you'll kind of miss that wave, and then she'd be up for a long time and everything. So unfortunately, I won't have her next Saturday. I usually don't have her on Saturdays, but just the schedule changed this week. Made me do that. So wanted to get a stream in anyway, though, because I like to keep in touch with you guys. I'll have some things to cut out as individual videos. Definitely going to try and record that Iconicast podcast, and I'll be talking about the origins of these archetypal horrors, where they're historically situated, and I'll be talking about something called the sex horror trajectory. So there's a little tease for you. But thank you guys for hanging out. I don't think Sound Engraver is going to be streaming tomorrow, unless she said differently. But that was the last she told me. But really good hanging out with you guys. You guys have made some really cool comments. I see. I'd love to sit here and chat. Bring them to the next week's stream, and we'll talk about them. You guys are talking about some cool stuff, and I promise we'll spend a little more time just chatting. And then we go over an hour if we need to next week. It's all good. So yeah. Thanks for watching, and until next time, keep enjoying and digging deeper into the true blue hero stories you love and Halloween stories you love. See you later.